You are stacking inventory in the back of a sporting goods store in Queens when the ceiling caves in. Not metaphorically, the actual ceiling. A chunk of reinforced concrete the size of a compact car tears through the roof and lands 6 feet from where you're standing, and the shockwave knocks you into a rack of tennis rackets. Dust fills your lungs. You scramble to your feet before the ringing in your ears even stops, because 3 of your coworkers are somewhere in that store, and the building is still groaning. You find Marcus first, pinned under a collapsed shelving unit, conscious and swearing. You lift the unit off him with both hands, which should not be physically possible for someone your size, but it is, and has always been, and you have spent 23 years pretending it isn't. You find the others near the front entrance, shaken but intact. You get them out through the emergency exit. Outside, the block looks like a war zone. 2 buildings down, something is burning. A quarter-mile north, the sky is full of noise and light and things you don't have names for yet. You stand on the sidewalk with Marcus's blood on your shirt and watch Tony Stark get knocked through a glass facade across the street. He hits the pavement hard, rolls, and comes up firing. Whatever he's fighting is enormous and fast and doesn't seem particularly concerned about being shot. You watch for exactly 4 seconds before you run toward it. Later, you will try to explain what that decision felt like, and you won't be able to. It doesn't feel like courage. It feels like walking through a door that has always been there, one you've spent your whole life standing in front of, turning away from, finding reasons not to open. You open it. You don't have a suit. You don't have a weapon. What you have is strength that has never had a ceiling you found, and a reaction time that makes the world feel like it moves through water when everything goes loud and dangerous. You grab a wrecked taxi and you throw it, and that gets the creature's attention long enough for Stark to regroup. What happens in the next 11 minutes is not something you're proud of in the conventional sense, because pride requires distance, and you are in the middle of it, swinging whatever you can lift, moving faster than you should be able to, taking impacts that would kill anyone else, and standing back up. When it's over, you're standing in a crater of your own making, bleeding from 3 places, and Iron Man is hovering 10 feet above you, faceplate up, looking at you like you're a math problem he hasn't solved yet. He says, surprisingly quietly for a man in a billion-dollar suit, "I've been looking for you." You say, "I'd like to go back to work now." You don't go back to work. Within 48 hours, you were in a facility in upstate New York, sitting across a table from Steve Rogers, Natasha Romanoff, and a man named Nick Fury, who speaks to you like he already knows every answer and is only asking questions to see how honest you'll be. They know your name. They know where you grew up, where you went to school, why you dropped out twice, every job you've held since you were 16. And they know, more importantly, that none of those jobs ever lasted because you always end up having to explain something you can't explain. You've worked 31 jobs in 23 years. You learn this number from Fury, who says it the way a doctor reads a chart. 31. Like the number itself is diagnostic. Steve Rogers looks at you across that table with an expression you'll come to know well, the one that doesn't flinch, and he says, "You've been carrying this alone for a long time." It isn't a question, it's recognition. You feel something shift in your chest that you don't examine too closely right then. You say yes to them because you don't have a better answer. Also because you've spent over 2 decades being careful, being small, pretending, and a building fell on you, and you still went toward the fight. You're tired of turning away from the door. The first 3 months are the education, not training exactly, because you don't need to learn how to be strong or fast or durable. What you need to learn is everything else: tactics, communication protocols, how to work inside a structure without becoming the structure's blunt instrument. Romanoff is the one who teaches you most of this, and she does it the way she does everything, efficiently and without ceremony. She tells you on day 11 that raw power without discipline is the most dangerous thing on a battlefield, not because of what enemies can do with it, but because of what you can do to your own team without meaning to. You think about Marcus under the shelving unit, about how easily you lifted it, and you understand what she means.
Steve Rogers takes you through tactical theory every morning at 5 a.m., and you realize quickly that what makes him extraordinary isn't the serum, it's the decades of consequence he carries in every decision he makes. He has lost people, he has made calls that cost lives, and he knows it, and he still makes calls. Cleanly, without paralysis. You watch how he does this, and you study up the way you've never studied anything before, because you're beginning to understand that this is actually the skill, the one that matters most, not the physical invulnerability, but the willingness to be responsible for outcomes you can't fully control. Your first official operation is a hostage extraction in a building rigged to collapse if the structural supports on 3 floors are compromised. You are the only one on the team who can move through those floors safely, so you go alone through the interior while the others hold the perimeter. There are 11 hostages. You get 10 out before the 4th floor goes. The 11th is on the far side of a collapse point, and the structure is moving, and Rogers is in your earpiece, and his voice is completely level when he says, "You need to make a call." You get the 10th person out. You cannot get back through in time for the 11th. You choose the 10, because the math is the math, because Rogers told you the math is always real, and you have to be willing to see it. The 11th person dies. His name was Dmitry Vashev. He was 44. He had 2 children. You learn this afterwards because you make yourself learn it, because Rogers told you that too, that you don't get to not know who you couldn't save. You carry Dmitry's name, and you will carry it for the rest of your life, and that is not punishment, it is accountability, and there is a difference, even when it doesn't feel like one.
By the end of the first year, you have been on 19 operations. You have a file. You have a call sign you hate but accept. You have a body armor configuration that's Stark designed specifically for someone with your physiology, which he presents to you with so much technical explanation, you understand roughly 40% of it, and tell him it looks good. He seems pleased by this, which surprises you. Stark, you're learning, expresses care through engineering. This is useful information. The second year is harder, because the second year is when you stop being new. Being new has a kind of insulation. Everyone adjusts for you. There's allowance for learning curves, for hesitation, for the moments when you aren't sure what the right call is. By the second year, the team moves around you the way they move around each other, which means they trust you implicitly and also means they make decisions based on your reliability. This is not a burden in the abstract, it is a burden in specifics, in the moment when Romanoff takes an exit route that puts her in a kill zone because she has calculated that you will already be in position to cover it. You are in position, it works, but afterward you sit with what that calculation required, which is not her trusting that you'll try, but trusting that you will absolutely succeed, and you feel the weight of that differently than you felt the weight of the shelving unit off Marcus, because this weight doesn't go away when you set it down. You are in Budapest when you make your first command decision. Rogers is down, not critically, but incapacitated, and Romanoff is running a separate thread of the operation 2 miles away, and there are 6 civilians in a building your team was supposed to clear before the target arrived 40 minutes early. The rest of the team looks at you. They look at you because you were the most physically capable person in the room, and because Rogers trusted you, and because sometimes that is how command passes. Not formally, not through procedure, but through the moment when everyone looks in the same direction, and whoever they're looking at either steps forward or doesn't. You step forward. You send Banner with the civilians. You send Wilson in low and fast on the target's position, and you go through the front of the building at a pace that is deliberately, visibly, overwhelmingly fast, because your job in this specific moment is to be a distraction, to make yourself the center of gravity, so everyone else can move in the margins of the chaos you create. It works. It works because you understand, finally, what your specific function is, which isn't to be the strongest or the most indestructible, but to be the point where the enemy's attention collapses inward so everyone else can do the actual work. You are the controlled catastrophe. You've been one your whole life. The difference now is that it's intentional. You fly back from Budapest in a Quinjet with Rogers still in a medical brace and Wilson asleep across 2 seats and Banner reading something on a tablet. And you look out at the dark and you think about the sporting goods store in Queens, about Marcus, about 31 jobs and 23 years of turning away from the door, and you try to determine whether you were the same person who lifted the shelving unit that morning.
You are, and you aren't. The part of you that lifted the shelving unit is the same. The part that went toward the fight is the same. But there is a layer over everything now. A layer made of names and calls and the weight of other people's trust. And it changes the texture of how you move through your own decisions. Nothing feels accidental anymore. Everything you do knowing it will be seen and measured and counted. In year 3, a threat emerges that isn't a person or an organization, but a system. A weapons network that has embedded itself in infrastructure across 11 countries and can, if triggered, kill an estimated 900,000 people within 72 hours. There is no mission briefing that fully captures what that number means. Fury reads it off a screen. 900,000. You sit with that number in your body for the 3 days it takes to dismantle the network, and you understand during those 3 days what it actually means to operate at this level, which is that the consequences of failure are not expressible in any unit of measurement that fits inside normal human comprehension, and yet you still have to make decisions at the speed that operational reality demands, without the time to fully feel the weight of what you're deciding with. Rogers does this. Romanoff does this. You learn to do it too, not by becoming numb, but by becoming extremely precise about when you are allowed to feel and when you have to function. You file it. You feel it later in the training room at 3 in the morning, hitting things until the number settles into something you can carry without it stopping your breathing. The network is dismantled. The 900,000 people never know. This is also something you have to carry, that the work that matters most is the work that leaves no evidence of itself. No one will ever know your name in relation to those 900,000 people. There will be no recognition, no closure, no moment where the abstract number becomes real faces that see you and understand what didn't happen to them because of what you did. You do it anyway. You do it because the alternative is the alternative, and you cannot live in the world the alternative makes. 4 years in, you have a reputation within the organization, not for being the most powerful, though you may be, but for the person who makes the call when the call has to be made, and then lives inside the consequences of it without flinching away. Rogers tells you once, between operations, sitting in the facility kitchen at an unremarkable hour, that the thing that marks a person is genuinely suited for this work isn't capability, it's the willingness to be permanently changed by it. He says, you walked into that fight in Queens already prepared to be changed, you just didn't know it yet. You think about this for a long time afterward, and you decide he's right, and also that it doesn't make anything easier, and also that easier was never the point. You were at the facility on a Tuesday with nothing scheduled when the alert comes in. Red level. Incoming. Multiple vectors. The details resolve on the screen in front of you, and your stomach drops the specific way it drops when the scale of something is genuinely new, when you are looking at a threat that requires everything the team has, and possibly more, and there is no guarantee, not today, that the math comes out the way you need it to. You read the briefing to the end, you stand up, you find Rogers in the corridor already moving toward the situation room, already in that expression, the one that doesn't flinch. And he looks at you, and you look at him, and neither of you says anything because there's nothing that needs to be said. You've been here before. Not here exactly, but at this particular edge where preparation meets something genuinely unknown, and you know what you do at this edge. You move toward it. You have always moved toward it. The door is open, and you are already through it. Whatever comes next, you are ready to carry it.